The New York Knicks are on track to get out of the Eastern Conference, but to be true championship contenders, they might need one more wing. Here's why Tari, Eason, and Keon Ellis could be the answers.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are locked on to the New York Knicks. I'm Gavin Schall. I'm a native New Yorker and a credentialed media member that's been covering the Knicks for nearly a decade. He's XJ. He's also a native New Yorker, and he is the co-host of the fantastic Hot Hand Theory podcast, where they cover the NBA as a whole through a unique analytical-driven lens. Is Locked On Knicks, your daily podcast on the Knicks, giving you the most detailed insight on your favorite team at least 5 days a week. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network in the entire world. On today's show, a topic near and dear to all of your hearts. We are talking trades. We're going to go over some wings that the New York Knicks could potentially deal for, including Tari Eason. Is he a realistic candidate? How could he transform the Knicks? Keon Ellis, someone we've been talking about on this podcast, I feel like, for 3 years, even though he's only been in the NBA for 3 years. And then we're going to do a rapid fire on a bunch of other guys, including 2 former Knicks. So that should be a whole lot of fun. But before we dive in, we want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. All right, XJ, I'm going to start right here. Are we sure that the New York Knicks actually need a wing? We've had these discussions before. I've gone back on their wing depth. I think the argument against them making a trade for a wing has been like, when it comes to the playoffs, it's just going to be Josh Hart. It's just going to be OG Anunoby. It's just going to be Mikal Bridges playing anyways. And if one of those guys get hurt, you're not going to get someone that's you're going to win a championship with anyways. So is it really worth the expenditure of assets, the expenditure of depth at other spots to get it done? And is there a candidate out there that would be worth the Knicks' time?
It's a great question. It's not a foregone conclusion that the Knicks should get a wing, and I'm convinced that they should and that they need one if they want to elevate to that championship legitimate contender. Obviously, I believe they'll win the East, and I think they are the #1 team in the Eastern Conference. I think that we've seen the weakness. You and I have explored this at great depth over recent weeks. As far as perimeter defense and containment, the Knicks give up the second highest frequency of 3-point attempts in the league. And that's not a result of, their perimeter or that's not a result of their interior defense. That's a result of their perimeter defense. That's a result of paint penetration. You need to be able to throw guys at in the Eastern Conference at guys like Cade, Jaylen Brown, Franz and Paolo, Donovan Mitchell, even Jalen Johnson if you get Atlanta early. But it's not just about the defense on the wing. I would love for the Knicks to get a wing who can guard those guys and also guard and contain on the perimeter, navigate screens. And something else that's really important is generate turnovers. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, why that's so critical as we talk about some of these specific players. But I think all of these things are things that the Knicks can get in a single person, a single player. And if you can package all of that into one player, then you really, really are basically solving all of your problems at one go. And so I think there's a ton of reasoning for why the Knicks should go out and get a wing who can check all of these boxes.
Yeah, to me, it kind of goes back to my dude's argument where I talked about like the Knicks being able to play this finesse style and then this overwhelming physical style. And OG Anunoby and Mitchell Robinson are the backbone of that. They are also the 2 most fragile guys on this basketball team in terms of injury risk. And you need, like, it's not even like to my previous point, if OG Anunoby's out for the playoffs, I don't think the Knicks can win a championship. But what if he misses 3 games in the middle of the series against the Orlando Magic in the second round? Like, at that point, it is incredibly valuable to have wing depth. And I know no one's arguing to the contrary on that, but I do think it's worth maybe giving up some of your guard depth, maybe giving up some of your future young talent, maybe giving up some of your limited future draft equity to ensure you have depth, given that you and I have talked about the Knicks are not going to have a better chance than they are this year. And I do think if OG misses a couple of games, I don't even want to throw Mikal in there. If Josh Hart misses a couple of games, even just having one of the guys we're about to talk about could be the difference between winning a championship and losing a championship. And you compare the Knicks to basically every other legitimate contender. My top 4 right now, you look at Oklahoma City, you look at the Denver Nuggets, you look at the Houston Rockets, you look at the Detroit Pistons, not all of them have the frontline wing talent that the Knicks do. I would argue all those teams have more optionality on the wings. And even if you go further than that, to like the Timberwolves, to the Magic, like they can just send waves of 6'8" guys off their bench. And it's not to say all those guys are flawless, but they can just throw a number of bodies, to your point, at someone like a Cade Cunningham. And the Knicks, like if their frontline option is injured or is not playing well, they just don't have that option. But there are very few, like, I guess, war daddies, for lack of a better term. Like I'm thinking like defensive tackles in football, like physical, athletic, monster game changer guys the Knicks can get affordably. The one on the long list that we both made was Tari Eason.
Tari Eason is, for me, my number one target for the New York Knicks. And you mentioned about the Knicks playing this finesse style and playing a physical style and being able to toggle back and forth from those styles, given the roster construction that they have, which is incredible. Tari Eason can do both. He provides both of those options for you all at once. He is the perfect fit for this Knicks team in an ideal world where he stays healthy, and his health concerns are part of why he, I think, will be available to be able to be acquired. But given health, this guy can do it all. He is an offensive rebounding monster at his position at the wing, in some ways similar to a Josh Hart. Can also shoot very, very consistently well. It's not the best shooter in the league, but a very, very, very threatening shooter from the corners, especially. This season, he hasn't played very much, but he's shooting over 50%. Obviously, that's going to come down, but a very capable shooter. And then just defensively is where Tari Eason does the things that matter the most. Ball screen navigation. He was 95th percentile in the league last season, so he's elite there. Defensive playmaking, generating turnovers. He is elite at that. That is something that he will bring to the team. Blocks, steals, all of these kinds of things. This is what Tari Eason is about. And you're just not going to lose anything. You can play small with him on the court where he can play the 4. Maybe he can play the 5 for some short stretches. Defensively, let's say if you play Eason and Towns together, those guys can switch off depending on who the opposition is. And he can guard the perimeter. He can guard smaller, faster players. He can guard big wings. That level of versatility, that level of, you're not losing anything as far as on offense, you're still getting spacing. On defense, you're getting on-ball play, off-ball defense, generating turnovers, blocks, steals, rebounds. You're getting everything from this guy. And so it's hard to imagine in a lab a better candidate to join this Knicks team, not affect anything that they're trying to do negatively, but just purely be additive to everything that they're trying to accomplish this season.
I mean, to your point, I mean, when you take into account the shooting and the track record of defensive playmaking, there is really no one else on the market that the Knicks could feasibly get that are like him. I mean, for his career, 2.1 stocks per game. I think like just under 2 steals per game last season. Like that is just a resume. Him and OG Anunoby together would be terrifying for other teams. Like, and it would just give the Knicks the optionality. And I think the timing of this is good because in yesterday's game, when the Knicks were really fledging in the first quarter defensively, Mike Brown put out this lineup that had Jaylen Brunson, Jordan Clarkson, maybe the 2 greatest defensive liabilities to some extent or another on the Knicks roster. And then he said, that's fine because I'm going to insulate them with OG Anunoby, Mohamed Diawara, and Mitchell Robinson. And Diawara is like the training wheels version. That even might be generous of what Tari Eason can provide. And you still saw like this just level of hounding, this level of collective length. Like if there was any world where they could get Eason and keep Deuce, like you put out a lineup of Deuce, Mikal, Eason, OG, Mitch. Like I think it would be like Oklahoma City where they're like, hey, you know what? I actually think it's better for us to just throw the basketball out of bounds and set our defense versus trying to score. Versus this group. And again, like that is a luxury that the Thunder have, the Rockets have, the Pistons have, even the Magic to some extent, to just put out lineups that suffocate you for 7 minutes. And the Knicks can do versions of that. I don't think they have quite enough on defense right now, especially to your point at the point of attack, to do that consistently. If the Knicks had that plus a historically great offense, all of a sudden, I think they're very much in Thunder conversations.
I love how you explain that. Those lineups that you mentioned are scary. I got goosebumps thinking about that defensive, like this just dominant lineup that you talked about. And our audience is probably going to be thinking, well, why would the Rockets trade Tari Eason if he's so good, if he's this dominant, if he provides this level of versatility? It doesn't really make sense. I'll tell you why it makes sense. And in fact, I think that Tari Eason will be traded this season. I don't even think it's like whether he will be traded. It's who he will be traded to. And there is the injury history that the Rockets are concerned about. Reportedly, they offered him an extension of $100 million, but it was unclear how much was guaranteed. They currently have a glut at wing. They have Josh Okogie, who they seem to have fallen in love with. Dorian Finney-Smith is coming back likely in the next few weeks. They use Jabari Smith Jr. as a wing. And Tari Eason just came back recently from injury. And Aaron Holiday, who is shooting the lights out, got a DNP with Tari Eason back in the lineup, even though Tari Eason only played 16 minutes. They need to make a move, and they want to recoup some assets. And they also can't probably sign all of their guys long-term, including Tari Eason, who's going to be a free agent, restricted free agent this coming offseason. I think that he will be traded. It's just a matter of who's going to be the highest bidder to acquire him.
Yeah, to your point, Zach Lowe did an episode, I believe, with our own Knicks Nation's Fred Katz over the summer on potential extensions, and mentioned that he could get up to $25 to $30 million this summer. That just seems out of the Rockets' price range, given they're going to have to pay Amen Thompson in a couple of years. They're going to have to pay Reed Shepard in a couple of years, already paying Şengün, already paying Kevin Durant. Like, the numbers are just going to get too high. Obviously, that's something the Knicks would take into account, because they would, unless they just drastically restructure their roster, they would most likely not be able to keep him beyond this year. But if we're talking about this year or nothing, maybe there's a deal on the table there. So when we come back, we'll talk about what that deal would look like. And we'll get into a Sacramento King that may or may not have been mentioned a lot on this podcast last year around the trade deadline as another candidate. We'll talk about that in just a sec right here on Locked On Knicks. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. All right, guys, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so incredibly exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place live bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into those moments. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. I've been advocating all year. If the Giants are losing or are in a close game down the stretch, bet on the other team. It happened again last night. Jackson Dart, only 32 yards passing, broke my heart. Minnesota Vikings, I almost said Timberwolves, pulled away late in that one. Only one or two more games left to do it, but it feels like a safe bet. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, all you have to do is visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, what's up, guys? We are back here on Locked On Knicks. Gavin Schall, XJ. Let's wrap up on Tari Eason. So what would this trade actually look like in your mind? Because I was trying to put it together a couple minutes before the show. The closest I got to making the numbers work were in this pain meme. I assume something maybe you wouldn't be a fan of. But given the Knicks guard glut, which is a topic for another day, but I do think the Knicks have a luxury of trading a potentially like key guard. Like I had Deuce McBride and Mohamed Diawara as an option. That falls $100,000 short. I'm assuming there's a way the Knicks could figure that out. Tyler Kolek and Pacom Dadier together also falls a little short. It's tricky because, to your point, like Houston might be in a corner in the sense that like they can't afford to pay him, but they're very much not in a corner in the fact that every other team in the NBA who wants to be competitive this year could use Tari Eason.
Exactly. That's the point, is that his demand is going to be pretty high, especially there are going to be teams who would pursue him who will want to give him that extension. So that you're competing with those teams if you're the Knicks, and that makes this very painful. So we talked about some of these things that, that Tari Eason can provide for your team. You're going to have to give up a lot to get that. And I know Knicks fans are very excited about what we've seen from Mitchell Robinson of late. I am as well. The free throw shooting, obviously the dominance of the things that we know that he actually does well and will continue to do well throughout the entire season.
Wait, so you're not buying the theory that he monstered Karl-Anthony Towns'?
I am not necessarily buying that, but we'll see. It'll come out in time.
That great Ian Begley tweet. A controversy in Knicks locker room. Mitchell Robinson monsters Karl-Anthony Towns.
Somebody needs to make like the Onion Ian Begley spoof account and then just like
don't tempt me, man. I have a busy schedule. I might lose my engagement over that. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I think that the Houston Rockets would be very, very interested in Mitchell Robinson's services. We all know Houston loves playing big. They love offensive rebounding. They have the top offensive rebounder in the league, arguably. Why not have the top two? You can acquire Mitchell Robinson and Steven Adams, and they would play, make no mistake, they would play those two together and just get every single offensive rebound that is possible. They would absolutely love to do that. In fact, I could imagine them playing Şengün with those two as well. I think you can have a Mitchell Robinson for Tari Eason and Clint Capella kind of situation if you're throwing in some assets from the Knicks side as something that would really, really intrigue them and potentially beat out some offers from other teams. So that would hurt a lot, but it is something that could get it done, I believe.
Yeah, and again, like you might be operating under the premise if you're in New York that you're not going to be able to afford to bring Mitch back at this point. So that's where that might make sense, even if Eason was only a 1-year deal. Like again, like that is. He is the outline of what you would draw if you could just magically place a non-all-star level player on this team. That guy would look a lot like Tari Eason. I think a player that's much easier to get, but maybe a little bit more complicated in terms of the pitch. But I know you've been a big fan for a long time, so I'll let you counteract that. Is Keon Ellis? He is a 6'5". About to turn 26-year-old on the Sacramento Kings, making $2.1 million. So just flat out salary wise, that is a lot easier for the Knicks to work with. The career stats are modest, just 6 points per game, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. Where he gets you is the 1.8 stocks per game. So similar to Eason, great defensive playmaker, and his career efficiency numbers, 49% from the field, 42% from three. If you've listened to this pod for a while, you've heard me talk about cleaning the glasses, points per shot, attempt metric. It's kind of my favorite all-in-one shooting metric. Basically, just every time you release the ball, including when you're fouled, how many points does it turn into? His second year in the NBA, 1.22. That was 90th percentile. Last season, 1.35. So almost 1.5 points per shot, 100th percentile. So he was the best in the NBA out of players who hit like a certain minimum. This season, he is shooting terribly. It is a small sample size. It is a very weird, inconsistent role because the Kings are just loaded with weird offensive first guards, and they've built just about like the most poorly thought out roster in the NBA, which incidentally, XJ, is also why they might be open to moving Keon Ellis to the Knicks at a relatively cheap price. I actually texted Locked On Kings host Matt George before this, and he said the Kings would still be asking for a first round pick for Keon Ellis. I'm wondering if maybe when they learn more about the market, if the Knicks could get him for a little less than that, or a fake first round pick like the Wizards pick plus another young player. What are your thoughts on him? And do you think he would actually be a mover for the New York Knicks? Because to me, there's much more of an overlap between what he does and let's just say someone like Landry Shamet. Like I think the Knicks have fast similes of Keon Ellis already where they don't have someone like Tari Eason. But am I wrong about that? Does he bring something unique to this team?
He brings something unique, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Keon Ellis, have been for multiple years now. It's just been like, I don't know, a running joke watching how he's been utilized in Sacramento, given his skill set and his talent. Again, to me, the difference between him and somebody like Landry Shamet is just the perimeter defense. Mm-hmm. I believe him to be an elite perimeter defender. Obviously, as you mentioned, we know he's an elite defensive playmaker in terms of blocks and steals, especially at the guard position / wing position. Again, the Knicks are middling in turnover generation, and creating turnovers can take their defense to a whole nother level. From 15th, they can get into the top 10 purely off of generating turnovers. Obviously, it also helps you in the offensive end as well. It makes your offense much easier. The Knicks love to win the possession battle. That is how you do it, but with turnovers. To go along with their offensive rebounding, they can do it with turnover generation. And the guy can just guard on the perimeter flat out. And that's really what you need. To me, the biggest threat for the Knicks this season, even in coming out of the East, is going to be their perimeter penetration that they allow. You need to shore that up. Landry Shamet will help that, but he will not help it in the way that a guy like Keon Ellis would. And I think that's their biggest hole. You talked about his cold shooting. He's 4 of his last 25 from 3. That's dragging down his 3-point percentage on the season. He's getting completely inconsistent minutes. I don't know many players who can thrive in that kind of role where sometimes it's single-digit minutes, sometimes it's 30-plus minutes, sometimes it's a DNP coach's decision. Like, it's like an unrealistic environment for any player to thrive consistently. And I think if he came to New York, he would have to get consistent minutes. That's the one problem that I see, is that the guy who coached him previously, under whom he did not have consistent minutes, was Mike Brown. So that's the one issue for me as far as the Keon Ellis fit. But just in terms of a fit basis, he is a perfect fit for the New York Knicks. Can play the wing role, can play the guard role, point of attack defense, turnover generation, shooting threes, and helping their spacing. He provides a dynamic that no one else aside from a Deuce McBride does, in a bigger package.
Yeah, I think to your point, like the Knicks have all these guards, and then you say, all right, but when they, like, hypothetically, because this is what you have to plan for, right? If you say you're a championship team, you have to ask questions like, what does this look like against the Thunder? Can they play Jordan Clarkson against the Thunder? As good as he's been recently, can they play Tyler Kolek against the Thunder? I think maybe yes, if this recent stretch is real, but that is very much a question. Like, can you play even as good as he is? Like, does Landry Shamet just like every time he takes a dribble against Oklahoma City, does he get his pocket picked? And then even with how solid he's been defensively, like, does he start getting targeted? And you're seeing like Shea just rain jumper over jumper over jumper on him. Like, these guys are all good players. They were all useful players. But outside of Deuce McBride, I don't know if the Knicks have a sure thing at like the backup 1, 2, 3, and Ellis at 6'5". I put a little bit, like, I think the majority of the minutes would end up coming at the 2. But to your point, he gives you some legitimately, kind of like Dante DiVincenzo with his ability to be physical and guard up a little bit. He gives you some wingy qualities at those sides. So I like that framing for him. And I think even like Knicks fans at home that are saying like, we have versions of this guy, to your point, he brings something just a little bit different, a little bit better. My trade pitch for him would be something along the lines of simply Pacom Dadier and the Wizards pick. Like, the Kings, obviously they have Nick Clifford. He's a little bit smaller. I think he's just 6'5". Like Keegan Murray, they just gave a ton of money to. They don't have a lot of two-way players. And Pacom Dadier is not even a one-way player at this point, but there's an outline there, right? And very small sample size, but 5 games in the G League this year, shooting 38% from 3. They are just in such a bad place. They need to take some swings. And I don't really know what the market's going to be like for Ellis. Maybe there will be richer offers out there, but I'm curious if he would intrigue them. And then they get like essentially 2 future late first round picks from the Wizards, which is like the 31st pick in the draft this year and potentially next year.
Yeah, I like that pitch. I think that they probably could potentially do better in terms of the Kings. I mean, he's going to be a free agent, so that makes it tough for a team. But I'm not sure what the value is around the league for Keon Ellis. And to me, whatever it is probably too low. So maybe I'm a little overestimating it, and maybe it could get that could get it done, that package. But it'll be something like that the Knicks offer. I don't think they're going to go too much above that or go crazy.
Yeah, I think he'd be awesome. You sold me on him today. I hope you sold everyone listening on him today. But when we come back, we threw out like 40 different names in our text planning for this episode. I said, you know what? We're not going to pick one guy. We're just going to go rapid fire. This is a challenge for me. I'm usually not brief. Let's see if I can get it done in just a sec here on Locked On Knicks. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Robinhood. Nobody knows your money goals better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto, all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney, your money, your move. All right, what's up, guys? We are back on Locked On Knicks. XJ, this is like, I'm always interested in what you have to say, but this is a rare segment where I would just call you up and list these guys and shut up and let you talk for an hour about them, because I am deeply, deeply curious on what you think. The first one I'm going to list is probably not super realistic for the New York Knicks, but me and Chris talked about him, and you didn't get a chance to talk about him, so I'm curious your opinion. Dante DiVincenzo, when the Knicks moved on from him, we had a super long discussion. It was a rare 50-minute episode for us on the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, just talking about like, man, they're going to deeply miss having a guy who has to be guarded 30 feet from the basket, even with one of the best offenses in NBA history. I would argue that remains true today. There's a world where he just makes them even more unstoppable on that end of the floor. The holdup, like you noted with Tari Eason, is Mitchell Robinson seems like the most obvious, and maybe you'll throw another name out there, but like candidate that could go out in that deal.
Yeah, and I loved yours and Chris's conversation on DiVincenzo. I think it's still worth listening to right now. So if people haven't heard it, go back and check it out. I would say for me, Dante, I love the fit, obviously, in terms of, the team standpoint. From a need standpoint, he doesn't really fit what I'd be looking for. And this is the difference between him and Keon Ellis to me, is that obviously DiVincenzo is one of the elite snipers in the league and long range shooters and is always going to add that spacing dynamic. He's just not going to change my world significantly from like what Landry Shamet is doing and what Deuce McBride is doing. And so that's different from someone like Keon Ellis, who I think is a lockdown perimeter defender and a turnover generation monster. So that is the difference there. I wouldn't hate getting him, but I wouldn't want to give up like a Mitchell Robinson for Dante DiVincenzo.
Okay, we can keep this one short. You mentioned to me we're going to get, if we don't say his name, we're going to get a ton of, hey, what about Trey Murphy in the comments? Can you tell people why Trey Murphy is an awesome player, but probably not feasible?
Trey Murphy, in my opinion, is probably going to be one of the most in-demand players in the entire National Basketball Association. For the same reasons that you listening to this love him, is the same reason that every other team, every other fan base, every other GM and president loves him as well. Elite deep range shooter, elite size at his position, all the tools to be an elite defensive player, can play on the ball, can create off the pick and roll, can shoot, obviously catch and shoot, one of the best snipers in the league at that. He just has everything. He's 25 years old. I think he's 25 years old. He might be 26, but he's young enough to continue to improve, and he's going to be even better defensively as he gets older. I just think you're talking about a deal where you'll probably have to give up the Desmond Bane package to get Trey Murphy, and the Knicks just don't have those kind of assets. Yeah,
and money-wise, it doesn't work. $25 million this year, 27, 29, 31. Like, you're talking about Mikal Bridges going out and then figuring out salary from there. Like, it's just too complicated. Another Pelicans wing that will likely come up, I believe, a New York native, if I'm not tripping right now. Saddiq Bey only makes $6 million this year, $6.5 million next year. Awesome scorer, has had a really good run of games as the Pelicans. I think, unless this is coming out tomorrow, but today had won 4 games in a row. He's been playing really well. What's the holdup with him?
I need defense. If I'm making this kind of deal, I'm not making the deal for a pure one-way player. Saddiq Bey's a great shooter. Would love to have his quick trigger and aggression from 3. But the Knicks, again, have a lot of that when guys get healthy. And he is just going to be one of these players who we get into these series and it's like, wait, Saddiq Bey is actually not playable against, team X or Y. And that just undermines the entire purpose of making the kind of deal. So Saddiq Bey to me is not even an option on my radar for the Knicks.
Okay. Well, we did one former Knick. How about another former Knick, Quentin Grimes? He is in that Tari Eason category of, if I were to drop a guy, and he's obviously not 6'8". If he was 6'8", he would be probably on track to make over $30 million, maybe like $35 million a year. He is exactly what they need as a point of attack defender, bigger than Deuce, can drive, pump, and create. Someone who I'm going to tear up talking about him is I loved him. And I argued from like his rookie year that like, I was like, yeah, this is the guard you want next to Jaylen Brunson for the next 5 years. And unfortunately, the Knicks didn't see it the same way. At the time they traded him, I was okay with it because he was deeply unhappy. I didn't think he had a long-term role on the team. And I think if he was still on the Dallas Mavericks, there would maybe be a way the Knicks could get this done. When he's a Philadelphia 76er, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, even though they might not be able to re-sign him after this year.
Philly's not trading Quentin Grimes to New York. It's just not going to happen. But yes, in terms of the fit, I love the fit. Obviously, elite perimeter defender. We know what he can do. Great ball screen navigator. Really fills all the checks, all the boxes that the Knicks need to have checked. Basically a guy who makes Jordan Clarkson, in my opinion, totally expendable. He can do a lot of the Clarkson things, but just in a defensive package that's like 10x better. That would be an amazing dream acquisition. Just not going to happen while he's in Philly.
All right, let's continue on the masochism train of guys that probably are not going to happen. Third Pelicans wing of this segment, man. The Pelicans, it's a fire sale. None of them are Zion. We spent years talking about Zion on this podcast, not him. Herb Jones, $13.9 million this year, and then it starts to go up after that. Someone who's tailed off, I think, a little bit after just an incredible start relative to his draft slot of his NBA career. But again, a guy in terms of assets and money, it just gets really, really tricky for the Knicks to make it work.
Very tricky to make it work, although I love his deal. Like, he's on a really nice contract for what he provides. We were putting in the contract numbers into some of our notes here. $14 million this year, $15 million next year. Then his extension kicks in at 3 years, $68 million. Very, very nice cost control for a guy that is going to be a strong impact player, especially given what we know he can do defensively. Right now, he's 99th percentile on perimeter isolation defense in the entire NBA this season. And that's just scratching the surface of what we know he can do and what he's capable of. A guy who has been compared to OG Anunoby on many occasions is like, who actually is the best perimeter wing defender in the entire league? Is OG? Is it Herb Jones? So that's a situation where it would be really nice to have, but I think a lot of competition for his services, and then the contract situation makes it difficult to figure out a trade that could work for the Knicks.
Okay, let's finish up on this guy, because obviously the Knicks a couple of years ago now swung like a trade for a star in OG Anunoby. I think we're both kind of on the same page that you fast forward to post All-Star break, February 22nd, most likely situation is the Knicks acquire one of the budget options. And my favorite of the group we have listed here is Max Christie. What do you think about him and the feasibility of him ending up a Knick?
Max Christie I think he's improved so quickly. And like, I'm really high on him. I love him as a spacer, and I think his defense is getting better. The problem is that those are probably the only things he can do right now. And so we're talking about guys who are actually attainable and gettable. And there's a reason why guys would be attainable or gettable. There's always going to be some drawback that comes with it. But as far as like potential to get better, the guy is extremely young, has been playing in the league for a while, and has just gotten better each season. So I think he'll get better offensively. But for the Knicks, what they really do need is a guy who can shoot and play defense, who can play perimeter defense, who can get over screens, who can be a guy who's a big body you can throw at these various guys that they'll have to go against as they get through the Eastern Conference and then make it to the finals. Ideally, he works for those situations. I think it's potentially attainable at I think $9 million. But yeah, he wouldn't be the highest on my list, but somebody that I would not be upset about if the Knicks actually acquired.
Yeah, to me, he's the quintessential injury insurance guy in this list. Like, God forbid, Mikal goes down for a couple of games, OG goes down for a couple of games. You can plug him in a way that you are obviously not going to be able to plug in Mo Diawara and expect him to like produce and compete, and at the very least, like hold his ground against some of the better teams in the NBA. But that's our list. Let us know in the comments if we missed anyone that you love. We will inevitably do an upgraded or an updated, maybe and upgraded version of this closer to the trade deadline. And we'll explore some guards and bigs too, because there's some fun names on those lists. But until then, he's XJ. I'm Gavin. Please comment, like, subscribe. It is the single best way you can help us grow the show. And we'll talk to you soon right here on Locked On Knicks.